Ah, Portal. Cakes, moon dust, and deadly AI. You just can't go wrong. You know, the Switch port of this game was really well done, but something just didn't quite feel right. Unless an Xbox controller on a Switch? What's going on here? Hello and welcome to Scotia Gamer, or as I call it, part 2 of weird adapters you need in your life. First and foremost, I just want to express my excitement that this channel is now up to 50 subscribers. While that might seem like a small milestone to some, it is very exciting to me, and I'd like to thank everyone who has subscribed to the channel so far, and encourage you to do so if you have not already. In my last video, I used the 8BitDo retro receiver to use some modern controllers on older systems. That video got almost 10,000 views, which is absolutely amazing, and I do really appreciate the support. If I can figure out how to do in-video links, I'll leave a link to that video at the end of this one. Today, we'll be flipping that around and demonstrating some other 8BitDo adapters that let you use retro or alternative controllers on a Nintendo Switch system. These adapters also work on PC, although this video will primarily focus on Switch functionality. Today, we're going to be looking at 3 adapters from 8BitDo, the 8BitDo GBros Pro, the USB wireless adapter, and the USB wireless adapter version 2. The USB adapters can also be used on Android, Steam Deck, and the Raspberry Pi, while the GBros Pro should work on Bluetooth devices that can also support X input. Now, first and foremost, this video isn't sponsored or endorsed by 8BitDo in any way. I just happen to be a fan of their adapters and wanted to do a video showcasing them. For each adapter, I'll talk about what I like about the adapter, what I don't like about it, and doing a demo of each adapter in action. Now, the main reason you might consider buying one of these adapters is simple. If you already have a controller you wanted to use on the Switch, you could save some money by buying an adapter instead of a Pro controller or a set of Joy-Cons. And that's primarily what I'm going to focus on here, comparing each one of these adapters to just going out and using a separate Switch Pro controller. I want to talk briefly about my test setup here as well. I'll be demoing on my Nintendo Switch system using the official charging dock connected to a Numite USB hub. Now, this hub does work with HDMI when connected to the Switch directly, but it doesn't work when going through the charging stand. USB, however, does work fine, although I find it works best if you plug the device in after you've connected to the Switch. Of course, without using the charge stand, the hub works exactly as you would expect. Now, this is somewhat of a long video, and while I would encourage you to watch the whole thing, there are chapter links on the right-hand side if you would like to skip to a particular section or see a particular kind of adapter being demoed. Are you ready? Let's get started. First up is the GBros Pro adapter, which will allow the use of either GameCube controllers or Wii Classic style controllers on the Switch. This is the first 8BitDo adapter I bought, and I bought it for a simple reason. The Switch Pro controllers were and still are crazy expensive, and I figured if I could leverage them as an alternative to the Pro controller, so much the better. I picked up the adapter for about $25 on sale, much cheaper than buying another controller. I absolutely love the purple color scheme on the adapter, even if my GameCube controllers happen to be the silver versions. It would have been nice if they had offered different colors to match the different GameCube colors, but so be it. Also note how the green, red, gray, and yellow buttons all match the color scheme on the GameCube controller. The adapter takes AA batteries, and the back cover can be a bit hard to get off. A rechargeable battery option might have been nice, but you can always use rechargeable AA's. You'll notice a toggle switch on the front of the device, which allows you to switch between switch mode and X input mode. That's what you would use if you wanted to use the adapter on a PC or another device that supports X input. You can also pair the device to both a Switch and a PC simultaneously and move back and forth just by toggling the switch. Now, to demonstrate how this works, let's start by connecting the GameCube controller to the controller port on the GBros Pro, and we can power on the adapter by hitting this red home key. Now, in my case, this is already paired to this Switch, so you'll see here that the icon shows up after it gets paired. If you were doing this for the first time, what you would do is you would go ahead and you'd hold down this yellow key until the light starts to blink rapidly. Then you would go into Controllers, change grip and order, and it should pick up the 8BitDo adapter. You'll see that the light's gone steady and that we've gotten a pair notification and the adapter shows up on this screen. So now we're going to go ahead and hit the A key, and now we can use the controller on the Switch. Firmware updates can be delivered to the device via the micro USB port at the top and the included cable. USB-C might have been nice, but of course, given the age of the device, that's not really that surprising. In fact, without batteries, you can even use the device in wired mode if you choose to do so, although getting all the wires hooked up might be a little bit difficult depending on how things are set up. So here we are playing one of my favorite games for the Switch, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, using the GameCube controller via the 8-bit-do adapter. And as you can see, it seems to perform quite well. Everything works as you would expect. The analog works. You can drift using the R key, and you can fire your weapon using the L key. A for accelerate, B for brake, and everything seems to work just fine. Mario Kart is a good example of a game that really you can use to test different controllers and controller adapters, simply because it will help you test the responsiveness of it as well as the button inputs. And you can also use Start to pause your game, and you'll see here that it comes up as a Pro controller, and really that's what we would expect. The 8-bit-do adapter itself has some extra buttons on it. Of course, red acts as a home key, and green acts as a capture key, which you're not going to find anywhere on the GameCube controller. And this kind of really brings me to my first con of using the GameCube controller on your Switch, and that's really just that it doesn't have enough buttons for everything. So for example, if we compare it to an ordinary Pro controller, you'll see that it has the L and R bumpers as well as the L and R trigger keys. And if we look at the GameCube controller, it of course only has L and R trigger keys along with a single Z key. And depending on how you configure the adapter, that's going to change how you're going to use the controller. So to help alleviate this problem, they actually allowed the GameCube controller to be put in two different modes via the 8-bit-do adapter. The first mode is what they call the Pro controller mode, where your L and R keys on the GameCube controller are going to get mapped to those L and R bumpers on the Pro controller. Meanwhile, your Z key is going to get mapped to the ZR trigger on your Pro controller. Now, to swap that to a different mapping, you can actually use a key combination on the GameCube controller. You're going to use L, R, A, B, start, and that's going to allow you to change the mapping. You'll notice that the light, the LED light on the 8-bit-do adapter, that's going to light up red for Pro controller mode and green for GameCube mode. And all GameCube mode means is that the L and R keys are actually now mapped to your L and R triggers, while that Z key ends up getting mapped to your R bumper. And this is going to be fine for some games. For example, Mario Kart, it doesn't really matter because the ZL, L, ZR, are all mapped to the same functionality anyway. But no matter which mode you're in, you're going to be losing at least one button. The other thing you'll notice about the GameCube controller is that there's no L3 or R3 click functionality. So games like Luigi's Mansion 3, which heavily uses the R3 click, is probably going to be a deal breaker for using this adapter for, and isn't really going to be a great way to play the game. And of course, the big game that they marketed this towards was, of course, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, as I know that the GameCube controller is a favorite among Smash players. I'm essentially just a terrible Smash player anyway, so it's hard for me to give a good review of it, but it essentially seems to have all the basic functionality, and if this is your preferred mode of play, you'll probably get good enjoyment out of it. Next up, let's take a look at the other major type of controller that the 8-bit-do GBros Pro adapter supports, and that would be the Wii Classic controller and the Wii Classic Controller Pro. As you see, the button problem is largely solved that we had with the GameCube controller, as now you're going to have both that L and R bumper, as well as your ZL and ZR trigger. It also has built-in minus and plus buttons, which is great because it just maps to the minus and plus buttons on the Pro controller, and you also have a native home button, which previously you would have had to hit on the 8-bit-do adapter itself. Those L3 and R3 analog clicks are still missing, so keep that in mind that it's not going to work with games that require those. Another nice feature of using this controller is that the D-pad and the analog trigger there are switched. So this is going to make it really good for playing retro platformers, for example, Super Mario Bros. 3 in the SNES Nintendo Online emulator. And I mean, you could use the official controllers, but they're usually out of stock and also very expensive. So this is really going to give you a good experience when playing if you already have one of these controllers. The other option, of course, is that if you were lucky enough to have an NES or a Super Nintendo Classic, you can use those controllers in here as they happen to use the same port. And that's really going to give you one of the most authentic experiences you could have for playing these games. This will also work just fine on Nintendo 64 games. Just keep in mind that the right analog stick on the Classic Controller Pro is going to get mapped to those C buttons on the N64 controller. So you'll have to get used to that, and that might be a little bit more difficult to play, but otherwise it should work just fine. So here's another type of controller that you might enjoy using the GBros Pro adapter with. Nintendo released a number of these licensed Fightpad adapters for the Wii. As you can see, I have the Mario one here, and these essentially look like large, oversized GameCube controllers, but they match all of the buttons and functionality you would find on the classic controllers. So you're going to see both the ZR and the ZL triggers, the LR bumpers, as well as those plus and minus keys. But they use a GameCube controller layout, and they're also a bit large and oversized in your hands. So if that's your thing, you might find this controller really useful. Again, here's sort of an example of what I'm talking about with using the R key for that camera controls, which can be a little funny. Now let's go get my star. Now, one caveat that I want to mention is you might think that this is a really cool and authentic way to play Super Mario 3D All-Stars, specifically Super Mario Sunshine on your Switch. And while it does technically work, it doesn't really make for the best play experience. For instance, if you're expecting to be able to use the analog triggers to control the intensity of flood, that doesn't work. It's actually going to wind up playing just like it did on the Switch Pro controller. And you're also missing a button. So for instance, on the Switch Pro controller, you need your L bumper to get into that guide menu, and that's really just missing on the GameCube controller. So unless you're going to be trying to constantly toggle between the two modes, GameCube and Switch, in order to remap the functionality of this, you're always going to be missing your camera center or your guide functionality. So it does work and you can play that way, but it's probably not actually going to be much better than just using the standard Switch Pro controller or the Joy-Cons. Now, I will point out that Nintendo did eventually add analog trigger support for a GameCube controller to this game, but it only works by using the official USB GameCube controller adapter, not the 8BitDo adapter. I have read that you can get a bit closer to the experience by actually pairing it with one of the USB adapters, which we'll see in a minute, but again, it's still probably going to be mostly the same or a bit substandard compared to just using the actual Pro controller. The next device we're going to look at is the 8BitDo USB wireless adapter. And again, I just want to say I really love the aesthetics on this device. I think the brown brick color really matches the theme of the device perfectly, and it's going to look really great plugged into your Nintendo Switch system. The adapter itself is just a simple USB dongle here. And again, I bought this for one simple reason. I already had some existing controllers that I wanted to use on my Nintendo Switch system, only in this case, it was actually my Wii U Pro controller that I wanted to use. So you can use this adapter really easily. You just take the top off here and plug it in. And here I'm going to plug it into the USB hub. But you could also just plug this directly into your Switch dock. Now, to pair the adapter with the Wii U Pro controller is going to be pretty simple. We're just going to hit the pair key on here so that it starts flashing rapidly, and then we're going to hit the pair key on our Wii U Pro controller. And we should see that it gives you a little vibration in order to let you know that it's been paired. Now, because before I plugged this in, I was already using the Switch Pro controller, we'll have to use the home key and change the grip in the order to make this controller player one. So we'll go in here and we'll hit L and R on this adapter, and we'll hit A, and this will put us back into the game. So now I can play Luigi's Mansion using using the Wii U Pro controller, and you'll see that it works just fine. And in fact, it not only does it have all the buttons that we're expecting, like the L and the R key, plus the ZL and the ZR key, we're going to get those L3 and R3 clicks again. So I'm not going to have any problem summoning Luigi to help me play. And really, short of a Nintendo Switch Pro controller, this is probably one of the best alternative controllers you can use on the Switch, as long as you don't mind the slightly different placement of those analog sticks. Now, of course, it does also lack Amiibo functionality and that gyroscopic controls, but as long as you don't mind those things, everything here is going to work fine. Now, since the Xbox firmware update broke compatibility for the Xbox One controllers with the wireless USB adapter due to switching the controllers to Bluetooth LE mode, it was only natural that the wireless USB adapter got an upgrade. Enter the USB wireless adapter 2. Now, the USB wireless adapter 2 has the identical form factor to the USB wireless adapter, only it's now sporting a black color. There is another variant of the device which uses the same color as the original, but I opted for the black one so I could easily tell them apart. On the brown version of the USB wireless adapter 2, it will have a 2 in the center here, so that you can tell them apart that way as well. The USB wireless adapter 2 supports all the same controllers as the USB wireless adapter 1, but now includes that Bluetooth LE functionality, which restores support for the Xbox One controllers, even the ones on the newer firmware updates, and adds support for the Xbox Series controllers, which I have here. Again, pairing the controller is really easy. First, we'll just go ahead and plug it into the USB hub. We, of course, have to turn on the controller by holding down the Xbox key. And then we're going to go ahead and plug this in until it starts blinking, and hold this down so that we start pairing it to the Xbox Series controller. And the light goes steady, and that shows that it's paired. Like the Wii U Pro controller, the Xbox Series controller is really a great alternative to the Switch Pro controller. It's very comfortable and easy to use, and you're going to find all of the same buttons that you would expect, your L and R triggers, as well as your L and R bumpers. Now we have 4 face buttons, just like we would see on an official Pro controller. The Xbox key here is going to map to home. We have minus and plus, as well as a share key. Now, one big thing that I'll note is that, of course, on an Xbox-style controller, the A, B, X, and Y buttons are actually opposite of where you would find them on a Switch controller. And for most people, this is going to be fine. And the default of the Xbox controller is to map things positionally. So, for example, the A key is actually going to be the B key on your Xbox controller. Now, if you're like me and you actually prefer the buttons on the Xbox controller to map to their intended functionality, A to be A for instance, you can actually go ahead and you can set that up with the 8BitDo customization software. And once you have that set up, you can activate your custom profile. So for example, by default right now, it's of course using the positional mapping, so B is actually my accelerate key. If I want A to be my accelerate key, this is how I activate my custom profile. You hit the L and the R bumpers simultaneously, and then you hit that L3 and that R3 click. And the controller is going to vibrate to let you know that it's activated its custom profile. And now when I hit A, it should allow me to resume back into the game, and A remains my accelerate key. To deactivate your custom profile, you just repeat the exact same key mapping. LR, L3, R3, and it's going to vibrate again. And we're going to see that B is actually now our accelerate key. So you can play with the different mappings and decide which one you prefer. So here we are in the 8BitDo Ultimate software, and this is what we're going to use to go ahead and create a custom profile. You'll see here that by default, the buttons are mapped positionally, so Y maps to X, B maps to A, and so on. And we're going to change these so that they actually map to their intended function, so that A maps to A. So to go ahead and do that, let's go and create a new profile. And once our new profile is created, we can go ahead and remap these buttons. So we're going to change X to X, A to A, Y to Y, and B to B. And once we're done, we're going to go ahead and say sync to device. It's going to give us a warning to close the software to keep using the controller when we finish with the settings. And you'll see here that it tells us about that hotkey combination that we need to activate our custom profile. So you're going to hit your L and R bumpers at the same time, along with your L3 and R3 clicks. You'll see that it'll vibrate twice in order to let you know the custom profile has been activated, and it'll vibrate once to let you know that it's been turned off. It also warns you here that profile reactivation is required each time when restarting the controller. And really, that's kind of my only big problem with this device, is that it would be nice if it was a way to set a default profile so that it would use it automatically every time you connect. Now, for a lot of people, this isn't going to be a problem because they'll just use the positional mappings anyway. But for people who like to use a custom profile, that's something to keep in mind, that you will need to reactivate it every time. Now that we have our custom profile set up in the 8BitDo Ultimate software, we can go ahead and activate it with that hotkey combination. So we're going to hit LR and L3 and R3 at the same time, and it's going to vibrate to let us know that the custom profile has been activated. And now the buttons will map as we expect. So A will do the A functionality, B will do the B functionality, and so on. If a company ever wanted to make a controller where these buttons were trivially swappable, or maybe were even little LCD screens so that you could switch them between the Xbox format and the Switch format, I think that would be really cool, and I would probably be one of their first customers. Now, keep in mind that unlike the Switch Pro controller, the triggers on the Xbox controller are analog, so they're going to have a little bit of travel to them. So you might need to hit them a little bit more, for example, if you're trying to drift or use your weapon in Mario Kart. Also, the Xbox controller will support both the 8BitDo receiver and an Xbox or PC using the Xbox wireless receiver at the same time. To switch back to the Xbox wireless receiver, you can just double press the sync button. Then to go back to the 8BitDo receiver, or whatever your last Bluetooth device was, go ahead and long press it to put it in Bluetooth connection mode, and it'll reconnect for you automatically. Now, since the USB wireless adapter 2 is a superset of functionality of the original USB wireless adapter, it's kind of a no-brainer that if you're picking up one for the first time, you would probably go with the wireless adapter 2. That said, if you saw one of these on sale somewhere and didn't care about Xbox controller functionality and could save some cash, it's still a solid choice for using alternative controllers on your Switch. Now let's look at some of the other fun use cases for this adapter. I have a Wii Remote here, and you're going to see that I can pair the Wii Remote with this adapter and use the Wii Remote on my Switch. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll hold down the sync key on the adapter, and we'll hold the sync key down on the Wii Remote. And there we go. We now have the Wii Remote paired to the Switch. Now, this is going to be a bit tricky to use, depending on the game. It might work for some very simple games, but you'll see that there's going to be a lot of button functionality missing. For example, anything just using a right analog stick is not going to work. But still, this is kind of neat, and it might work for some simple games. But there is, of course, another big use case that we could do with this, and that takes us back to using it with our classic Pro controller. So let's go ahead and plug that into the Wii Remote. And now this works just like it did when we paired it to the GBros Pro. And we can go ahead and play games like Mario Kart with this. And it even has some of the rumble or vibration functionality. But that's not all. You guessed it, we can even use this to work our GameCube controller. And here it is, another weird adapter. This is the Mayflash Gamecube controller adapter for Wii or Wii U. And this is actually going to let us use our GameCube controller in the Wii Classic controller port. So go ahead and plug your GameCube controller into the adapter, and then plug the adapter into the remote. And now we're back to playing with the GameCube controller, just like we did with the GBros Pro. So if you have one of these USB adapters and you happen to already have a Wii Remote, you can actually just bypass the GBros Pro adapter altogether and go straight into using the Wii Classic controller and the GameCube controller, if you have one of these adapters, directly on the Switch. Another use case that you might not think of is that you could actually go ahead and pair the Nintendo Switch Pro controller to the adapter. And you might think, well, why would you do this? You'll see here that if I go into controller settings, this controller is actually paired via USB, not natively via Bluetooth. So why would you do that? And the answer is, well, let's say that you wanted to frequently use your Nintendo Switch Pro controller on different systems. Maybe you want to use it on your Switch, maybe you want to use it on your PC, maybe you want to use it on your Steam Deck. So by pairing it to the adapter, you can really just easily move the controller around between different devices. And in fact, you're still going to get gyroscopic controls by using it this way, which is actually pretty neat. So that would be a good option. Again, if you're going to use this on different devices, you could go ahead and do that rather than trying to repair the Switch Pro controller to all the different devices all the time. I will point out, however, that you lose amiibo functionality by using it in this mode. As you can see, I'm having trouble unlocking the Peach suit by just tapping her to the top of the Pro controller. But if we go ahead and unconnect the USB adapter and we go ahead and natively pair the Switch controller again, I'm able to unlock Peach no problem. So before I forget, I just want to point out that in order to make any of the USB adapters work, you do have to go in through the Switch settings and enable USB Pro Controller mode. So under System Settings, go ahead and find that under Controllers and Sensors. And scroll down the menu until you find Pro Controller Wired Communication. Click that, and you'll see that it'll warn you that NFC functionality can't be used with a controller that uses wired communication, and that you'll need to use wireless communication to use something like an amiibo, which is what we saw with Peach. So go ahead and hit OK, and you'll see now that Pro Controller's wired communication is on, and this will allow us to go ahead and use the USB adapters. Finally, let's talk about how you're likely to be connecting your adapters to the Switch. Now, in my case, I'm just demoing with a USB hub. However, most people are likely to just be using their regular Switch docks. And right away, this kind of presents an immediate problem. If you have any ideas of using more than one adapter on the device, you're pretty much out of luck because, well, they're quite wide. You could use an extension cable or something here, and you can even try plugging one into the back. But again, you really don't have a lot of clearance, and you're really just going to be barely fitting your HDMI and your power cable in there. Now, originally to rectify this issue, I went ahead and bought one of these USB hubs that's designed to sit underneath the Switch dock, and this works pretty well, and it will certainly expand your capability, but again, you run out of room pretty quick because I can't even fit 4 adapters side by side in this dock. The most I can actually fit is 2. It would have been nice if they'd spaced out the ports a little wider here, but that's what they did. So if you want to use more than 2 adapters on your Switch system, you're going to want to go ahead and you're going to get a different kind of USB adapter, one that looks like this, which is going to allow you to slot these in vertically. And then just plug this into your dock. And you're off to the races. The Mario Kart races, that is. It's a bit disappointing that they made it so that each adapter can only pair one controller at a time. I mean, it makes sense from a marketing and probably a design perspective, but of course, each of these could have been implemented as a USB hub that would allow you to connect multiple controllers. So, if they ever wanted to make a multi-tap version of this adapter, one with maybe that several sync buttons that just connects via a single USB port, I would probably be one of their first customers, and I think that would be really worth buying. Now, the last thing I want to mention about the USB adapters is that they are unable to wake the Switch from sleep mode like a traditional Pro Controller or Joy-Con. In order to use them, you'll have to turn on the Switch manually first or using an actual controller, then hit a button on the controller to sync it and use the device. I personally wouldn't consider this a deal breaker, but it is something you should be aware of, and we all know it's usually the second player that gets the unofficial controller anyway. This is actually a common issue with many third-party controllers. I do know some that will wake the Switch from sleep, like the Power A controller, for instance, and I think even the newest 8BitDo Ultimate controller can. But yeah, these adapters in USB mode, they're not going to wake the Switch from sleep mode, so you'll have to go ahead and do that before you actually can use the controller. Overall, I think each adapter is a good choice for using alternative controllers on your Switch, as long as you're aware of the caveats that come with each device and are willing to compromise on those items. That's it for me. I hope you enjoyed seeing how these 8BitDo adapters work and function on a Nintendo Switch system, and how their functionality compares to using a traditional Switch Pro controller. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and if you have not subscribed already, there is still time to do so. Once again, thank you to everyone who has subscribed so far. I have plenty more videos planned for the future, including product unboxings, review videos, gameplay videos, and even a part 3 of weird adapters you need in your life. So go ahead and subscribe because you definitely don't want to miss out. This is Scotia Gamer. As always, have a great day and game on.